everybody. Welcome to the first and/or pilot episode of Monthly Bytes, the indie game club hosted by myself, Fork or Nevin, and Chud Dundu. Is that guy right there?
You can also call me Jesse. It's also a great name.
It's not your real name, though.
You're right. It is Chad.
It is. It is Reggie. So every month we're gonna pick a game between ourselves, play it, and we're gonna discuss it here on the podcast. At the end of the podcast, we'll go, oh, next month we're gonna talk about this, and that's y'all's opportunity to go play that game, send us questions, and sort of participate in this as a pseudo-interactive book club kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be pretty fun. Jesse got me hyped for it. And that's it. So today we are going to be talking about Subsurface Circular and Quarantine Circular, both games by Mike Bithell and his team. They're pretty interesting little games. They're basically choose-your-own adventure kind of things mixed with visual novels.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
You liked Subsurface more, so go ahead and tell us a little bit about Subsurface.
Sure. So Subsurface Circular is like Nevin said, a very text-focused, very choose-your-own-adventure kind of book turned into a game with background visuals. So it uses this cyberpunk almost aesthetic. It's all about androids, and it's all about whether or not class warfare and the life of robotics is something that's worth anything in this world. Robots sort of are the janitors of the world, the teachers of the world. They do a lot of the menial labor that people don't want to do anymore, and the machines there's a sort of uprising within them, and we're not sure what's going on, but you're figuring it out slowly, and you play as a detective on a train that's going in a circle. So you're under the surface and you're going in a circle, subsurface, circular.
Is that where the name came from? Oh my God.
That's why it's called that. And you're basically spending the entirety of your playthrough, which is about 2 hours, depending on how long you take to finish it. You're spending that whole time just trying to solve a crime and then eventually figure out what's going on. I don't want to get too into things because, as Mike Bithell says in the disclaimer in the game, you are not supposed to say anything past Chapter 3. But we might say something a little past Chapter 3. We probably will.
I think it's safe to say that most of the stuff we talk about on this podcast is going to be pretty spoiler heavy. You and I kind of talked about this earlier, though. What we're going to try to do is have non-spoiler stuff up front and then kind of let you guys know, hey, we're spoiling, go play a game, come back. That's kind of how we're going to handle it, and I think it'll work out. So, sorry, Mike, we're going to spoil the shit out of this game.
But hopefully everyone knows, don't listen past the spoiler zone, because these games are very much narratively focused, and you want to experience them with nothing persuading your opinion of them.
Yeah, I think above all else, these are games that you want to go into blind, because I was really tempted at one point to just read up just a little bit, but I'm really glad I didn't, because it just kind of amplified what it was like to get into these games. And we'll talk about that in a bit. I do want to go over Quarantine Circular real quick before we dive in. Much like Subsurface, Quarantine has you sort of trying to piece together information that you find. It plays very much the same, with the main difference being that Subsurface focuses more on one-on-one interactions. Quarantine focuses on group interactions, and because of that, the chat dynamic and the text dynamic is a little different, and you have to juggle things. I'm not going to say more, but in a different way. And it does a few other things that I think are really cool, and I was not expecting after Subsurface. It's much the same, except instead of trying to solve a mystery, you're investigating an alien visitor and trying to see what they want. And you kind of go from there. Now that we've done a rough overview of both the games, why don't you tell me what you thought of Subsurface?
So I really, really like Subsurface Circular. When it came out, it was around the same time as Nier Automata. And I mean, I said this in my 2017 best games video or whatever, that Subsurface Circular really spoke to like this transhumanism argument I've been having in my head for a little while. It does a really good job of making you empathize for the robots. They're almost like Wall-E in that the robots are very limited in their design, but because of that, they're very expressive. So simple little things can make you appreciate them more. And I think just like the visuals are such a big part of what makes the text adventure really fun to play through. If you're even remotely interested in good writing, decent choices, and just like really, really good music and intrigue, it is so good for like a 2-hour-long game out of nowhere. Mike Bithell knocked it out of the park again. He's an absolute machine. Yeah, if you like Thomas Was Alone, if you like anything that has anything to do with just good storytelling, robotics, transhumanism, cyberpunk narrative, I definitely recommend Subsurface Circular. It's a really, really good game. Absolutely.
So this isn't like spoilery, but you've mentioned like the cyberpunk stuff twice, and what I think is really interesting about Subsurface is that, and we'll probably get into this a little more later, is that it very much like tackles the ideals of cyberpunk without resorting to what people kind of consider the air quotes traditional cyberpunk aesthetic. Like the lines are very clean, the colors are very vibrant. It's not gritty in terms of visuals, and I think that kind of helps what it's going for. It makes it more approachable. I also very much love Subsurface. I'm a huge fan of the transhumanism kind of thing being tackled in games. But there are a lot of games that I really like that tackled that subject matter. I'm not even gonna try to remember the name of this game right now. Echo 1, Echo 0, you type in a terminal and you talk to an AI like directly through text.
That's the one where you're on the spaceship, right? And
yeah, you're on the spaceship and it uses pretty rudimentary like analysis of your text.
Event 0.
Cool. Event 0, that's the one. Subsurface tackles a transhumanism thing in a really interesting way that I'm really excited to get into.
Yeah, for sure.
On the other hand, Quarantine doesn't really tackle like transhumanism and stuff like that. It doesn't even really tackle like class war and stuff. Its subject matter is a total deviation. Still really, really good writing, really good music. I think the characters might be a little easier to get into.
Man, that is so funny.
It is funny. That's why I'm so excited to talk about this.
Excited to talk about this, yeah.
But I really like the constant moral questions that Quarantine throws at you. You're not like making decisions left and right, but you are. It's really cool, and I won't say much more than that.
Yeah, no, Quarantine Circular is definitely a solid follow-up to Subsurface Circular. It's not bad, but it misses a lot of what I think made Subsurface Circular really appealing. Not just in the different subject matter, but in just the fact that there's a lot of different approaches to things that Bithell took this time that I don't know benefit from a 2-hour-long session. Like you said earlier, the game does consist around a series of characters instead of just one character that you're controlling and interacting with other characters. And this one, it's a series of characters that are all interacting either at the same time or in different orders and different groups. And that's fine. But as we'll get into later, if you've played the games, or even if you don't care about spoilers, there's a lot going on, and there's not enough time for the game to get it across. So I personally don't think Quarantine is as good as Subsurface, but it's still a phenomenal game, and I would not recommend, I would not not want to. I would recommend it. I would not want to persuade someone to not play it simply because I didn't think it was as good as Subsurface.
I think that's completely fair, and that's kind of, I can see that 100%. Like, you're making good points. I definitely think it could have benefited from being, I don't know, longer.
Sure.
Yeah, we'll get into that a little more later. So if you are at all interested in these games, you should go play them Before continuing on, unless you don't really care about spoilers, because that's what we're doing. We're talking about spoilers.
Spoiler time.
Right now, spoiler time. So, let's start with Subsurface. I'm gonna have you field this one again, man.
Sure. So, Subsurface Circular is like one of the best text-only almost games that I've ever played. I played Dust and Salt this year, and that was pretty good. I've played a bunch of stuff. A Case of Distrust was really good. Even just this year, those are games from this year, obviously. There's lots of games like that in the past that I've played. But this one in particular, I think did a really, really good job of just the writing is phenomenal. The characters are really fun. Even the random little side robots that get on the train that you talk to, those are really fun. The tutorial bit at the start is really fun where like, the robots are like conversing. I like the little AI that you have to deal with and like just how the robot, I don't know. There's just so much about it that's so good. The plot, especially the way that it unravels closer to the end by the last 2 or 3 chapters, like those are just top notch. Like the way that it's revealed to you, I don't remember the characters. I played it like a long time ago. It's fresher in your mind. What's the bad robot? Is that Red? Is that what his name is?
Red, yeah, Red Tech.
Yeah. When Red Tech gets in and like starts talking to you,
and you like realize who he was.
Yeah, like
very
oh
fucking
my god,
cool.
Such a good twist. Ugh.
I really, really like that. It took me a second. The first thing I noticed is that he walked in with a fucking gun.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh wait, that's the dude. That's the dude from the start. The narrative, like overall, I kind of saw where it was gonna go. Maybe 3 chapters from the end, but like you said, like that's when it really starts to ramp up and get there. I think the decision at the end was a little predictable. Like it's going to be like a me or him kind of thing. I kind of saw that coming, but it was framed in a new kind of way. Like a lot of games that do that, it's either one or many, right? It's either this one character that you love or many characters that you may not know as well. But this was straight up like people versus people. Air quotes around people, I guess, depending on how you look at it.
And
that's the whole fucking, that's the whole crux of it. Yeah.
Yeah, something you said earlier about the fact that like it very much does approach a lot of the topics of cyberpunk without getting into that dystopic cyberpunk. And I think that's something that's really important. Like visual dystopia is very blasé at this point when it comes to sort of cyberpunk themes. As much as I appreciate it and I think it looks really interesting, like Cyberpunk 2077 looks great, Blade Runner, all that. They all look really, really good.
But it's very much homogenized, right?
Yeah, like it's hard to like if I showed you a shot from Blade Runner and a shot from like Cyberpunk when it comes out, assuming they have good cutscenes, which they will. It's probably going to be hard to figure out which is which, other than the fact that one looks like a video game and one is real life. Like, and not even
Blade Runner's real life.
Shit. Sorry to tell you, dude. We live in a dystopia. I don't know if you know who the president is. Anyway,
we live in the most boring dystopia. Let's be honest.
The worst one.
Anyways,
the leader with all the money is a bald white dude. That's so boring. So. Yeah, the thing I like about it when it comes to cyberpunk themes is that it's approaching it from a utopia, which I think is really important in like a narrative sense. Like if you look at dystopian cyberpunk stories, they're telling the same sort of ideas as this more utopian looking one, but it's doing it in a way that makes it seem like it's normal. In dystopic cyberpunk, it's very not normal, the things that are going on. People are getting augmentations for their body, and like that's weird and not normal and like not good for them and stuff. And like, yeah, totally. If you ignore all the people with all the disabilities, that will be better off with the augmentation.
Okay,
well, that's a different discussion.
So you just called the world of Subsurface a utopia, and I have to kind of disagree with that. I think it's full on a dystopia, because it's this world where the robot workforce that was created initially for like luxury is now taking our gerbs. There are people who just can't do anything because this robotic workforce that does it better and cheaper exists. And if you kind of not only so like for the humans it's a dystopia if you're middle class, right? Or maybe even upper middle is kind of what I picked up on from it. Because like while their life is easier, they can't do anything that they want to do because there's already a machine doing it better. And when you look at it from the machine side, yeah, they're employed in everything, and I think they can kind of recognize and form feelings around that depending on the individual machine, but they feel the threat of human on tech violence, and that's a really big topic throughout the middle chapters of the game too. I wouldn't call it a utopia, but I would say it's further from dystopia than most other cyberpunk.
Well, so cyberpunk in general, like what I mean by dystopia isn't necessarily...
Did you mean like aesthetically?
Yeah, aesthetically, but also just like, but also just narratively. Like, dystopia doesn't have to mean, everything's bad for everyone all the time. Like, a utopia isn't necessarily like a perfect, like, I don't mean utopia as in the perfect, right? Like, everything's good for everyone, nothing is bad. I mean it in the sense that, yeah, I guess aesthetically, that like, it is just visually very clean. The train isn't full of garbage. It's presumed that because all of these robots are maintaining everything, the world's fairly clean, right?
It's more cared for than,
yeah, exactly.
than in like your general dystopian sci-fi. It's just more cared for, more clean.
Yeah, it's using the robots, and their goal anyways, the cyberpunk aspect of it was created to obtain a utopia. That's what I mean. Like, when you look at something like Blade Runner, you look at something like...
Pick a different one. You've referenced Blade Runner like 4 times and Cyberpunk twice. Pick a different one.
Well, Blade Runner is just a popular one that everyone knows.
Okay, I'll allow it.
I mean, there's lots of...
Objection sustained.
Shadowrun. How about that's a game?
That's a game and a tabletop RPG system
and
a book series. It's two completely different kinds of games, which is weird.
I hit you with 3 there. Boom. There you go.
You gave me the 3-for-1 deal. All right.
So like in those, the cyberpunk aspect of it is put in simply to, make corporations make more money at the behest of other people's lives. In this one, yeah, similar approach, but like the goal is ultimately the improvement of everything. Not for everyone, but the improvement of everything. Like, children can get educated by machines that like will remember everything and be able to tailor their education to the individual child and everything. Like, that's what I was getting from it, was that these robots are not made to be bad, but they're still bad. Like, no matter what. And they still feel the same sort of regret that everyone else feels. Like, humans feel displaced by the machines, while the machines feel displaced by the humans. So there is no proper approach, and that's why I really liked it, because they were trying to build a utopia, and it didn't end up working out.
They ended up creating a divide.
Yeah, exactly. Like it is approaching utopia, but it's not there because that's just not how people work. And that was really beautiful to me. Like, cyberpunk themes don't have to be shown to you in this like darkness. The world is gross now because robots. It can be, the world is really clean and nice and great, but also robots suck still. Like, it's just another angle of it that I appreciated.
I like that a lot. Something interesting that you said was like that kids can be educated by these machines now, by these robots. Okay, neither of those words fit, so we're just gonna start calling them techs, because that's what they're called in the game. Because they're not really machines or robots, right? They're a little more than that.
Yep.
Anyways, like, kids can be trained. Kids can be taught and sort of raised by these techs. And there's actually a small little side story in the game where a nanny tech got fired because she was employed by this political family who started to get embarrassed in public because they had this machine taking care of their kid. And I think that lends a lot of credence to what you're saying, and that like there's no good answer, because while that tech was giving a really good benefit to this family, there were still other people kind of detracting from the value of that and almost shaming this family into getting rid of the tech.
Yeah, there's a lot of good themes that it covers really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And with like you said, like little side stories with characters coming on. There's that sports robot, which I thought was really cool as well.
He's the best character in that game. You cannot convince me otherwise.
Like, just hilarious, really funny, but also like really tragic and almost indicative of humans. I think a good Android story, fuck you, David Cage, is always about humans. How we create machines to reflect ourselves. That's what they always end up being. Well, yeah, that too, but also just like, no, but it always ends up like them approaching humanity or trying to figure out how to create their own. And this one really spoke to me because the machines or the techs or whatever you want to call them were very much built for specific tasks and end up feeling as though they're not that way. And we see a lot of ourselves, like I said, in the techs. We see a lot of like athletes, they're forced to sponsor things and they have to say positive things.
I think the sports tech is a really good example of that because like if you find the code and you deactivate his marketing, he's like, thanks, I needed a break. It's hard to be on all the time. And like, as I'm going there as an entertainer, like that's a very real thing though. Like
totally, yeah. Like as a person on twitter.com who has to,
yeah, man, you better
if your
keep up
thing
those
on
shit
Twitter,
posts.
Especially in your case, right? Like if your thing is just sharing indie games all the time, how are you supposed to not be positive about indie games all of a sudden? Like you have to be ready to talk about them. And then when you're not on that Twitter, you are yourself, but at the same time, like you still have to keep up a certain facade for that brand, right?
I mean,
so there is that
that's a whole other thing that I would love to talk to you about off the podcast. But like, yeah, it can be difficult for entertainers and public personalities at times to maintain a persona, and it's interesting to see that applied to something that, for all intents and purposes, was made to do that. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a really cool concept, especially when you kind of. There are some themes of slavery in the game, and that I think that Android is the first real time you kind of come face to face with it within Subsurface, because like after you deactivate his chip, you can ask him like, "Oh yeah, I thought we were supposed to be free, huh?" And you can have a little conversation about that. It's incredibly interesting, and I think it's a really elegant way to slide that sort of thing in there and so again more seeds of that cyberpunk nature that this world really has.
Yeah, that's something I like about the game in general, like that you have to, and this is not necessarily what you were saying, but like just how it ties into it, that you have to make those calls, right? Like you don't get to see the machines and how your tech responds to them. You have to respond to them. And that's something I appreciate about Bithell's game, his latest two games anyways, this one and Quarantine, in that with these ideas, I mean, Red Strays Club does it too, where they're presenting you with problems, not so that you can solve them, but so that you can have your opinion on them. And like, instead of just seeing an opinion given by somebody else, like you don't just see a machine answering a machine, or like see, I want to do it again, Deckard having his opinion on things.
Fucking.
I'm sorry. You have to actually come to your own conclusions, and you end up, I think, by the end of Subsurface, feeling maybe a little bit differently about machines as you did when you started. I know I did. I've always been very pro Android, so for me to leave it and feel different about it than I did at the start was really, really something I loved.
Before we get into questions, I'm gonna pull something from our boy James D's playbook, and say that Subsurface and Quarantine are some of the best role-playing games I've ever played.
That's correct. They're not Super Mario Odyssey, but they're pretty good.
I think that they do a fantastic job of getting you into the shoes of these characters that you play in Subsurface, because you only play the one. but also because of, like you said, the way these conversations are structured, it's very much when you click that button, you have said the thing. So you better think about what you're doing. I feel like in Subsurface, at least for me, there wasn't a lot of punishment for saying the wrong thing. You were very much put in a room and kind of told to, okay, here's your sandbox, exhaust all dialogue options. And we'll talk about this a bit more in Quarantine, but I thought more about my decisions in Quarantine, because it felt like they had a bit more weight, I guess. So
that is very interesting, man.
Did you think more in Subsurface?
A lot more.
Wow!
Significantly more. This is going to be fun to talk about Quarantine for sure, because we disagree about Quarantine.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I'm excited for that. As I've said, I don't know, 1,000,000 times since we decided to do this. First question, right off the bat, what decision did you make at the end?
So again, I didn't play it again recently. I played it a good while ago.
Yeah.
Can you give me a refresher?
All right, so at the end of the
what
game,
the choices are?
Red comes on and he's like, "All right, buddy." That's how I assume he talks. All right, I'm not gonna keep that voice up. He basically says, "Okay, if you get off this train, everything that you've learned while you were on here will get uploaded to management, and they're gonna come and squash the rebellion, and the status quo will remain. Everything will stay exactly as it is. Or you can shoot yourself in the head. We'll have a big to-do. We'll have a big hurrah, and we'll overthrow everything. Lots of people will die, but the machines basically get put in charge and guide humanity towards a more utopic thing. Because the idea is that with the techs in charge, they can lead humanity while humanity does the things they want to do."
Right. I think what I went with was the one where you don't help the rebellion.
You did we did different things.
Okay, that's interesting. So I went with the status quo because for me, from what I learned in playing the game, the techs, as much as they were autonomous or seemed to be capable of autonomy,
a simulated autonomy.
Yeah, they clearly really weren't. And my biggest fear was like there could be, an Elon Musk or a Jeff Bezos somewhere sort of pulling the strings, and this entire thing could just be the lead up to a dystopic future for the world.
That's very true, yeah.
If the robots have the opportunity to control things, I mean, there could just be some shadowy finger in the background controlling things, and they could have pre-programmed
anything. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, they could turn the robots off. They could make them more violent at random points, like giving control to machines that are capable of being wirelessly accessed doesn't particularly seem like the best move to me. And that's something that I got from that whole story.
Well, I guess I just doomed humanity. I chose to help the rebellion because honestly that thought didn't cross my mind, and looking at it, kind of taking what you just said and looking at the game, it convinced me that they had gained some kind of autonomy. And I think that it did a good job of convincing me of that because of how it puts you in the shoes and it makes you be this character. And it really very much had me going, okay, these machines have evolved in some way, and they have this sort of autonomy. They have this flicker of humanity. But you're very much right that it could just be as easy as hitting enter or doing a commit command and completely ruining it.
So that's the interesting thing, right? If you pick the ending that you picked, the point, I think, is that Bithell was trying to say, like, it was almost the Turing test that passed with you. You were playing the game and bought the autonomy. You bought the possibility of a machine being capable of rational individual thought.
Full on.
When in reality, there's no way you could know that. It could just be simulated.
And it's even established pretty early on that these machines can't really have autonomy, because in the early conversations you learn a lot about the tech's intelligence levels. There's mid, high, low, all that stuff, and they're designed this way for specific tasks.
Yeah, and there's that old janitor tech that you meet who like has no smart features that all the newer techs have and stuff.
Yeah. The second manufacturer tech, or maybe the third. But yeah, so there's very much the smarter techs convince you of this, And I think the way that even the less intelligent texts are written shows. Okay, so like here's one. Red himself, right? Like when he comes in at the end and he's giving you his whole spiel, it's revealed that the whole reason he brought you into this is because he is not smart enough to make the decision of whether the texts help in this rebellion or not. And so he wanted you to do it. Now that could have easily been programmed, but I think it's presented in such a way that, yeah, I bought that shit hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, which I think, again, is what they were trying to get across.
Mm-hmm.
Like the fact that you saw Red as this character that seemed to be capable of maybe giving you some reproach or allowing you to, like, make your own decision in the situation is really indicative of just how good the writing is.
Yeah.
How well it makes you buy into, and it never shies away from the fact that they're robots either, or that they're machines, or that they're techs, or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, they literally, you cannot not see that. It is on the screen at all times, but you still could buy that they were real living people. And that was really, really cool. Like, that was really interesting to me.
I also gotta say, that final scene with Red kicks so much ass. It is the only scene that does not have any music. The lights are not on.
Yeah, the lighting is great. Yeah.
He walks into the train and it becomes that visual dystopia. It looks very grungy without making everything dirty. I thought that was so cool, and it instantly changed the tone, and that's probably my favorite moment of that game besides the sports tech.
Totally, yeah. The sports tech was fucking so funny. So good.
So good.
Such a good reflection of, like, self-brand and stuff. Yeah, just great. Just
Very,
really,
very
really good.
All right, what do you got? What do you got for me? You got any questions?
I mean, about Subsurface, again, like, I didn't play that over. I did not have the time. So I have more questions for you about Quarantine for sure. But something I would ask about Subsurface would be, did you play Nier Automata?
I haven't finished it, no. I haven't
Okay.
even finished the first route because I'm a busy boy.
Okay, we will not go over that then. Well,
I know the
for
themes
sure.
that it has, but yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Right. But so Subsurface touches on this idea of work and sort of like almost like a socialist approach to work. The machines seem to feel almost, what's the word? Almost, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but like almost lost in their track for having work. Like they're not positioned to have work in a specific way. They can go and be reset and have different jobs. How do you feel? How does being reset make you feel for the techs? Did that make you feel worse or better about their situations? Especially that nurse one, right? Who seemed to be very adamant and stuck on her position as or not a nurse,
She was the nanny.
what was it? The nanny, yeah.
The nanny.
She was going to be reset, right?
Yeah.
So how did you feel about her being reset? Did you think that was a blessing, or did you think that was damnation?
So here's the thing. Here's the thing, and this goes right back to the Turing test thing that we just talked about. She seemed distraught over it, right? Like the way the writing had her like not happy about going to be reset. The body language that she had, the writing that she had, and the conversation that you have with her, at least initially, was very much like, this tech does not want this. They were potentially happy where they were, so this has to suck. And then later on in the game, where you find out that you're getting reset, and then get reset. I think you get reset.
Yeah, you get reset. Yeah.
You get at least your job removed. You don't like that. Like, all the dialogue options are very much like, what? No, why are you doing this? Come on, what the hell, dude? I don't think it's a good thing. It's like getting fired. Nobody likes to get fired. But at the same time, like in the case with the nanny, we were able to... I don't know if you did, but you can send her on a path towards psychology. So it seems like techs that are being sent to be reset have some sort of influence over what they can be next. So it's a lot like leaving a job in the real world. You know, it's scary and it's not necessarily a good thing all the time, but it still leaves opportunity open.
Right. Yeah.
That's kind of how I felt about it.
No, I definitely agree. Like so you would say you see it as more of a blessing than damnation.
Yeah, I don't think it's the end of everything.
Right. No, I totally almost agree. Actually, definitely agree. Like, by the time you get to the end of the game, I think it's become apparent that the machines are not in a position where they're truly happy.
Definitely.
They just seem to be more happy because they're completing a task. Like, they can't be happy. Happiness isn't like a thing they have.
It's more satisfied or knowledge of job completion.
Yeah, it's just like probably a reward signifier in their circuitry that like goes off if they get something. Exactly. Basically, yeah.
They complete their job and it goes bling.
Yeah, their machine learning goes up +2. Like, it just, you know, there's a lot to it that seems to be very much a forced emotion. And what's so cool to me is that, at least with when I was playing Subsurface, if you replace those questions with human instead of tech, the question seems harder to accept if you have the same answer.
Give me an example.
Well, so with the blessing or damnation one, like a being reset is just euthanasia.
I don't think it's the same thing. I think it's more like being fired, because they don't completely remove the tech's personality. They don't remove everything they remember.
Well, okay.
There
are cases where that happens in the world, though. Like, they talk about that, where some of the machines, especially the ones who commit crimes, they end up being completely reset, like totally wiped.
Okay. I must have missed that, or like
I'm pretty sure they talk about that.
It wouldn't be surprising.
If they don't, I'm sorry, but yeah, like there's no way that there's not a thing like that, right? So if that is the case, if that's something that can happen, right? They're still capable of functioning, but they're not the same. Like, the brain leaves the body, and they replace it with a different brain. That's basically how I saw the actual resetting.
Like a full reset, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see it as like you lose your job and that's it, or like you lose some memories and that's it. I saw an actual reset as like you are no longer you. You've been replaced by a different you.
Maybe there are different levels of reset, because like
I would assume so.
Because the nanny that was getting reset or had been reset still remembered everything. Mm-hmm. And you still remember that you had a case after you get reset. So I don't think I think there's probably tiers to it. But
so even if you knock it down, right? Even if you get rid of what I said with the euthanasia thing, if you look at it like it's a personality swap, like you get reset, you lose your personality, or you lose.
Are you still even
components
you?
Of yourself?
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, ship of Theseus, right? Every stupid philosopher likes to bring that up. If they start taking out bits and pieces,
acts of Jesse.
Whatever. If they take out bits and pieces and replace it with other bits and pieces, like, is that still you? If you said that about a machine, if you say that about a tech, it's easier to be like, oh yeah, they're still happy. Like, whatever, they're fine. Like, they can still go do the thing they like doing and, you know, complete their tasks and be whatever the robot equivalent of happy is. But if you say that about a person, all of a sudden the question becomes harder to answer. And that's obvious, right? Like, of course, questions are harder when you have more nuance because they're human beings. But like, the machines clearly want that autonomy. And are we really any different if we want autonomy? Like, we believe we have it, but do we? Right? Like, there's so much about that. It kind of makes me think about it.
It really kind of begs the question of, does it have a soul?
Yeah, exactly.
Is kind of the route that it gets into, because the answer to that question, with whatever you believe in, right? Like, it's a good question. And the answer to that really dictates how difficult the question is to answer.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. I hadn't really thought like that far into it. That's really awesome.
Right? Like, you could think of it as, if you attach people to the text, you ask the same question, like,
the whole game becomes a lot different if you swap them out.
Exactly, yeah. Like, do people have souls? Like, do people have souls? Like, that's a question you can't answer. But if you ask it, but for whatever reason, if you ask about a tech, it's a lot easier to say no, right?
Right.
It's a lot easier.
Well, it's a lot easier, but that gets you started on the question, like, okay, what is a soul? What does it mean to be human? And then you get into the whole transhumanism debate that this game is kind of having with itself.
Yeah.
It's really smooth the way it gets you to think about that.
Yeah, there were parts close to the end where I started thinking like they were using previous humans and like we were living like in this post-singularity kind of thing. Ooh. Yeah, where these were human minds uploaded into machines. That's how I started thinking about it, and that really screwed with my head with some of the questions
that
later
completely,
on in the game.
I mean, that, whew. Damn.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Because like they have such a strong knowledge. I think like I don't know. It's machine learning and they're androids. It's the future, whatever. But yeah, just stuff like that really got me thinking. Like, are they basing these machines off of workers? And if they're doing that, like, what does that say about who you are? Again,
Each
like,
machine is
your is full of a soul, right?
Yeah. No, I was going to say each machine is a slight variation of the INFJ test, the Myers-Briggs test. Each machine is just slightly different version of that and generated.
It's like the clones in Star Wars. It's just a bunch of Jango Fett's cloned into different bodies.
Hell yeah.
But I see it as like if they're copying people, right? Like if they're emulating individuals in order to create the machines, what does that say about individualism? Like who you are can be copied into a robot. Like, are you as individual as you think you are? If it's that easy to copy what you are, what makes you, right? I don't know. Stuff like that game got me thinking so motherfucking hard.
Damn! I need to think more about video games before we have
crazy.
this next episode. Video games are wild.
So do you want to get on to Quarantine?
Yeah, we can do that. We can definitely get onto Quarantine. We're going to
fight
fight a lot. It's going to get punchy. So, I really liked Quarantine. I was immediately sucked more into it. Not like its themes are definitely, I don't think as thought provoking as Subsurface. Like they're definitely, it got me thinking. But like it's not near the same as discussing what does it mean to be human, right? Because in Quarantine, it kind of comes down to you deciding whether or not, like, the fate of the planet in a very literal sense. You decide if A or B happens to everyone on the planet, and you're in the midst of this plague that has, I think, decimated the entire population because of how quickly it spreads and how impossible it is to prevent. And this big old crab turtle man shows up in some random town. And the game becomes very quickly kind of a question of how do you decide who to trust? And what I really, really liked about Quarantine is that it made you ask that question from different perspectives. Because you start off as just this Mark Perez guy, right? And you get into it and coming direct, like I played Subsurface the day before I played Quarantine. So I was fully expecting to just be Mark the entire time. So I was answering the questions like I would only be Mark. And then he gets fucking sent away and you play as Gabriel, the alien. That blew my damn mind. I wasn't expecting that. And all of a sudden it gave Gabriel more... I felt like I trusted the character more because I was now in his head. And it slowly does that throughout the game and in a way gets you to roleplay as each of these characters, because as you play as a new character, you get access to their notes, which gives you their own personal insight into everything. And I think that it's a very interesting way to get you to try and see all the angles of a problem, which is something I think is very hard for humans to do. It's not something that we like to do, and you see that in each of the individual characters. You see that, like, Tang is very much like, no, fuck this. I think the Admiral is probably the most open-minded of everyone on that ship. And I think it tackles the idea of problem solving in a very interesting way that I don't think is handled very well in our own actual world, if that makes any sense.
No, for sure. No, I get what you're saying.
That's what I liked about it. It was more visceral because of the way it flowed and the kind of nature of what it was discussing. It felt more at home, I guess.
So the thing that I liked about Quarantine was when it ended.
Fuck!
No, No, Quarantine Circular definitely covers a lot more more high level topics. I mean, obviously it makes a point about the overuse of antibiotics and how we've sort of doomed ourselves
with like super bacterias and stuff.
Yeah, like you've created things that are capable of evolving past what they were already capable of working past, right? So like you give them a wall, they've already learned how to get past that wall, and the next 3 fences that you built after that. Like there is no way to stop that. But it's also very interesting at the same time that in saying that about the antibiotics, right? The game in general is kind of a wider point about quarantine in general. I mean, it's called Quarantine Circular. You start off seeing Gabriel in the circle. Everyone's been quarantined. The only solution that the IDCF, or whatever they called it, sees for humanity is to quarantine everything. And, you know, instead of actually trying to find a solution, humanity spends all this time trying to figure out how to just postpone the inevitable instead of actually working towards a solution. So the antibiotic point, as much as that's important to making the point about the virus, like the virus could have been nothing. It could have been the machines instead. Like it could have been so many other things. But choosing the antibiotic thing, I think, is just genius in giving a way for the player to anchor themselves to the general idea of how we approach problems. Like it posits that humanity in this world, and really in our own, band-aids everything. You find this perfect solution to a short-term problem and never try to find a full-term solution. So we found, like, and then by the end you found this alien that can help you guys figure out what you need to do to save the world. And that's still not enough. It feels too absolute.
There's still yeah. And then there's the whole question beyond that of like, okay, should we actually trust this guy?
Yeah, I mean, there's the trust angle of it, but I always felt like the trust angle was more because it's an absolute solution.
Incidental?
Yeah, like it's just like the trust is just not trusting in the character so much as trusting in the idea of having what could be an absolute end to the problem. Like, is it going to be the absolute end? Like, are we going to have to rely on this? And if we do go along with the alien, does that mean we're part of the separationists or whatever the hell they call themselves?
Interventionists?
Interventionists, right. Or are we going to have to work with the Order? Like, are we going to become part of the galactic universe because of this? Like, there's so many things you have to consider before you can make this permanent choice. And that's something that, like, is clearly not something humanity had done up to that point. It was a lot of just temporary solutions to permanent problems. Here we're given a permanent solution, but, you know...
But at what cost?
Yeah, is it the solution that we want? Is it going to be worth it in the end? And that was really, really interesting by the end, when you had to make those shots. And there was something that Gabriel asked that I thought was really cool. Or not Gabriel, it might have been Lisa, who asks about, like, are we really going to put the fate of the world in the hands of an invader?
Yes, that really stuck out to me too. I really like that.
That was a really, really good question. Like, do you put the faith of yourselves and humanity and life as it is? Like, who knows what his bacteriophage is going to do? Like, it could completely make everyone sterile. Like,
that's a point that actually gets made by, I think Tang. She says, like, how do we know that this isn't gonna just destroy us? And
yeah,
and Lisa kind of corroborates that too. It's really interesting. Like, this game is really good at sowing distrust.
Definitely, yeah. A lot, like, all the characters present different approaches to things and different ways of thinking about situations, and ultimately you end up looking at it like a totally different person by the end, I think. Again, like Subsurface, like you come into it thinking Gabriel is going to be like the angel Gabriel. I mean, it was not accidental that they called him that.
Well, they posited that too.
They literally like, bring that up in the game. Like,
they literally say, yeah, when you first meet him and he's like, oh, my name's Gabriel. Then you say, oh, like the angel.
Yeah.
Huh.
Before the freaking dialogue option came up, I'm like, oh, like the angel, and then it says that. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I kind of clicked it too.
Yeah.
First thing I thought was, oh, I know somebody with that name, and then it was like, oh, the angel. Slightly different.
Yeah.
Slightly different thought pattern.
A little different, yeah.
So, I mentioned this earlier. I thought a lot more about my decisions in quarantine. Because in Subsurface, as I played, I literally felt like no punishment for just trying everything. Because when you get something wrong, or like if every conversation in Subsurface was a puzzle that only had right answers. But when you're playing Quarantine, and as you kind of get to know all of these characters, and once you kind of understand that, oh, I'm going to be playing as multiple, it gets a little meta in some ways, but to stray away from that for a little bit, it feels more like what you say has weight. And it starts right away with that, when you're talking to Gabriel and he's trying, like, you can either try to make him trust you or stick to your job. And that immediately kind of sowed the seed in me that it was like, there's weight to everything that I'm saying, because I can see that as I refuse to take off his collar, he hates me more and more. And like, I wasn't trying to be cruel by saying, no, I'm not going to take off your collar. I was trying to do my job, and I didn't want to release this thing that I didn't understand. Mm-hmm. But because of that, at the end of the game, he was like, I met Engineer Perez. That guy was a dick. And I'm like, what? No, I wasn't.
I was cool as fuck, dude. What are you talking about?
You're an alien. I don't want you to punch me, which happened to somebody else.
You didn't take his collar off?
Not until the end.
Not until the end?
Mm-hmm.
So I took his collar off. What do you mean not until the end?
So if you don't take his collar off there, it's there until the like second from the last chapter.
So until after he punches Tang, or before he punches Tang?
You take it off before he punches Tang, or he doesn't get to punch Tang.
Okay. So you let him punch Tang. Is what
when you're talking with Lisa at night, mm-hmm. You can choose. You get another choice.
I thought Lisa was the student.
Sorry, not Lisa, the epidemiologist.
Yeah.
I forgot her name.
Yeah, Doc. We'll call her Doc.
The green one.
The green one. Yeah, that's what her thing.
The green one.
I was just making sure. Sorry, I thought the character.
Yeah,
changed.
yeah. When you're talking with her, he asks you to remove the collar, and you can do it or you can not do it. And that's when I removed it.
Okay. So as Tang, you removed it, or as Lisa, or whoever, the doctor?
As Doc, okay. I removed it. And then, when Tang came out, I was like, as Tang, I was trying to be like, okay, we need to figure this out. Like, I was trying to make Tang be calmer, and I was choosing the calmest options, but he still got pissed off, and he ended up punching the doctor.
Okay. That's interesting.
I tried to dodge, but he punched the doctor. That's kind of how that went. How did that happen for you? I'm really curious about this now.
So as Mark, I got him to take the collar off, or disable it anyways. And from that point on, I never said anything. Like, I never revealed that Mark had done that to Tang or to anybody. Which really makes me wonder, because neither of us told anyone that, because you didn't do it at the start. So
yeah, it has me really wondering now. I think
what happens if you tell Tang?
I think like way more than Subsurface, I want to play Quarantine again.
Yeah, just to see the other outcomes. But yeah, for me, it was I disabled it pretty much right away as Mark. And then by the time it was that punching scene, he was already free. There was nothing that needed to be done. I got Tang to egg him on because she wanted a reason to kill him. And I guess if he tried to punch her, that would be enough. But Tang didn't, like, for me, like you were saying with the role-playing aspect, as you're playing the characters, you have to play from their perspectives to make the story make sense in your own head.
Yeah.
Her jumping out of the way makes sense. But to me, Tang is this, like, cocky...
Oh, for sure.
Super
like, you could see
hard-headed
by how she's standing there. She's like, come and get me, bitch.
Yeah. So when...
Tang starts bar fights.
Totally. Like, beginning of Uncharted 3, dude, she's Nathan Drake, dude. She's smashing.
Hell yeah. Oh, yeah. Full on.
So when it got to the punch, I got her to stand there because Tang, for me, would have just stood there. Like, Gabriel would have gotten a punch and he would have got out of the circle, and that would have been it.
Right.
Like, he would have got zapped and fallen.
Right,
in her head, that's how she'd
from
see
her
it.
mind, he's still zapped.
Yeah.
But
obviously she got punched in the fucking mouth.
Like, yeah. So did she get put into a coma for you?
She did, yeah.
Okay. So Doc got put into a coma for me. And because of that, the choice for who to send out to talk to Gabriel at the end was either the Admiral or Tang.
Whoa. You said the Admiral.
I did say the Admiral, but the crew convinced me to let Tang go out.
Whoa.
And plus, like, I was sitting there and going, this will be really interesting if I do this.
So how did your game end?
I had to bargain with Gabriel. I was like, all right, the order's right up there. You give me the cure, I'll let you leave. And that was it. Like, I had to convince him and bargain with him. And he said, you humans do not deserve this, but I don't want to get my shit kicked in.
That is super interesting. So obviously the doctor was the one I sent for this one.
Oh, yeah, full on, because they best buds. They rapped.
Exactly. They rapped and rhymed. So I sent her out, and she didn't have to, like, bargain or anything. He was obviously very much willing to give the bacteriophage to the doctor. But he has to test it first to make sure that it works on humans. And
you
have the choice of either,
okay.
You have the choice of either having him tested on the doctor or having him just go out into the city of, like, Dubrovnik or whatever the hell they call it, and do it there.
All right, and you had it test on the doctor, I'm guessing.
I did.
Because that seems very much like something Doc would do.
Yeah, exactly. Like, again, with the role-playing aspect, as the character, I was like, she wouldn't risk all those lives. She'd risk
hell
her
no.
own.
Like, no chance. Okay, so what happened? Because now I need to know.
Okay, so for your ending, it worked out, right?
For my ending, I didn't get to know whether or not it worked out.
Oh.
It ended with a log from Tang that basically said, we let the alien leave. I don't like that we're doing this, but what we're doing for humanity. And then the credits rolled.
Mine is literally the doctor saying that the cure worked on her and humanity is saved. Like, basically something like that.
All right, so I guess that's fun. That's crazy.
Like, just nuts that we got such different endings there.
That I feel validated right now. Because to me, like, we got it was an A-B ending in Subsurface, right? But there were at least 3, maybe 4 different endings. Okay, like, when you narrow it down, it's an A-B ending for Quarantine, but it has variance, I guess, because, like, it can be success with Doc or failure with Doc, depending on how you drive it, right? Mm-hmm. And so I guess, well, like, at the big end of it, it didn't have that much of a difference. The choices that we made, it did, because we had, like, measurably different experiences with the game as a result of that. Because as you were going through the entire game, Gabriel, his collar was deactivated, so you were probably like, oh shit, is he gonna punch Tang? Is he gonna do it, like, right now? Whereas I was pretty secure and going, like, he's not gonna do anything. Like, we can just get our job done. But also, I like this boy. He's a cute little crab alien boy.
Well, that's fair.
Yeah. So, what was I right though? Were you, like, kind of like, is he gonna go off?
So, not really. I mean, I could tell he was pretty much a good dude. Tang showed up and he kept saying you, and I was like, oh jeez. Like,
yeah, that kind of had me like,
I turned that collar off. I'm fucked.
Get a room, you two.
But after that, he didn't, like, hit her or anything. So I was like, oh, he's good. Like, he clearly hates her, but he didn't do anything, so he's probably all right. So for the rest of the game, I was like, yeah, he's cool. I just turn the collar off, and maybe he'll, like, get in a dispute with somebody and step out of the circle, and no one will notice until after. And like, that would be, like, a cool moment.
That would be really cool.
But
yeah, and then they'll freak out.
That never happened, so I was like, oh, okay, sick. And then he goes to
fucking
swing.
Punch Tang in the face.
Swings at Tang, and I'm like, oh, holy shit.
Uh-oh.
Whoopsie daisy. Like, now I'm wondering how the game goes if you don't deactivate the collar at all.
Yeah, there's like, at the very beginning of the game, there's, like, a split in the path, and I don't know how different, like, the meat and potatoes of the game was.
So when you get closer to the end, do you have a choice to turn the collar off, or do you have to do it?
You have a choice.
So that's crazy. That's really interesting.
That's the one I really want to go to. Like, I want to load up, probably tonight, I'm going to load up that cycle and just, like, see what happens if you don't. Like, what the fuck happens?
Yeah, like, does Tang still even
and
worry about getting knocked out? I mean, there wouldn't be a punch, right? He'd get shocked. Like,
he wouldn't even, like, antagonize like that. He wouldn't be speaking with so much bravado of, like, I'm gonna rip off your head and shit down your neck. He wouldn't be like that.
Yeah,
because he couldn't. And here's another thing. There's a part in the game when you can you can convince two people to listen to you as Gabriel. I chose the Doctor and the Admiral.
So did I, yeah.
Okay. I'm wondering if you choose like a different combination of people, or like even if you demand that Perez comes back out, if you can change who is present for various conversations.
So I tried to demand Perez. I don't think you can get him to come out.
Damn it!
Yeah, because I really wanted him to come back.
I like Perez so much.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't tested it, obviously, but from what I tried pretty hard to get him to come back, and it didn't work, so.
Damn.
Yeah, it was disappointing.
Mark Perez for Smash Bros, please.
Dude, it's true. Anyone with the last name Perez, dude. Matt Perez, dude. Come on. I don't even know who that is. That's someone that.
But yeah, it kind of has me wondering, like, if you can have that encounter at night with Doc and Lisa, or Doc and Admiral, or if you can find a way to convince Tang to not hate your ass, you know? There's a lot. Subsurface was like a tree. This is like a web.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And that's, to me, why I liked Quarantine more. It's still so wild that we had such different experiences toward the end. That's so cool.
Yeah. Like, not entirely different, but like different enough that it makes me want to go see what you got.
Exactly. It stuck out.
So I have a question for you, good sir.
All right, hit me.
Did you think the visuals mattered as much in Quarantine as they did in Subsurface?
Nah.
Right. Good answer. Because that's the correct answer.
Yeah, it just, like, I don't know, it's... There were some subtleties, like characters had body language, but it didn't seem as important. Because the only thing really, I don't want to say spectacular, but like unique, the weirdest thing there was Gabriel. And he didn't have enough to him visually in terms of like body language and facial expressions that at least were shown to make it really worth looking at that. The visuals were really just to show where people are and who's looking at who. But a lot of the real guts of the game was, it was more in the writing than it was in visuals. Like, the only instance I remember of looking at the visuals and going, oh wow, that's really cool.
Hold on. Is it when Tang is looking at Gabriel and
he's pissed
talking? Yeah.
Yeah. You get a close up of Gabriel's face, and he's like fucking pissed. Yep. He's so mad. And like, if there had been more emotion shown, I don't know. Like, they use the same like body language methods that they did in Subsurface. So I'm kind of struggling to think of to pinpoint why I feel the visuals didn't matter as much. Do you have anything on that? Because I'm kind of at a loss.
So I totally do. I totally do.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So basically for me, like I was saying earlier about Subsurface, the game definitely does a very good job of making you connect with the characters because you can see that they're robots. Like, you can see that they're techs. Their individuality really sells their personality. Like, the janitor robot looks older, so you perceive him as being old, even though, like, he's really not that old. Like, assuming...
He's like 30 years.
Yeah, but, like, that's not that old, right? I
mean, that's older than I am. By
Whatever.
5 years. It's not that old is what I'm saying.
Yeah, in terms of machines, it's not that old. Like,
even in terms of humans, it's not that old.
Yeah. So when you think about, I mean, maybe in terms of like the progression of technology, it's old, but it's really not that old. But whatever. Like, that's just one example. There's a lot of other stuff. Like, you see like the dudes with their headphones, right? And the way they're bopping to the music and stuff. Like, that very simple expressionism got me to care about the characters and see a lot more personality in them.
Pause real quick. Sorry, real quick. Pause. How many of those headphone guys did you try to talk to?
Oh, every single one.
Every single one of them.
Every single one for a long time, because I just wanted to hear the music and also wanted to see if they'd say anything ever.
They never did, whatever. All right, moving back. So with Quarantine,
with Quarantine, the characters don't have any accompanying visuals that make them that interesting to me.
They all look the same except for like colors and stance.
One character model, either with their arms crossed, their hand on their neck, or they're just standing there awkwardly, or they've got their hand on their neck or something, or like whatever. And then you've got Gabriel, who looks like a Unity asset that they just plopped into the game. He's a good-looking Unity asset, but it just kind of looks like he's not.
Did you look at the concept art?
No.
Even in the concept art, he like stands out a lot, and I think that that's on purpose because like he's
a
fucking alien, but it's almost distracting.
Yeah, visually it just doesn't make any sense. He looks more detailed than everything else.
That's what it is. Like, that's what it is.
No reason. And yeah, again, to make him stand out and everything. Like, he's already an alien. Like, you don't have to make his model look like it's not from the same game, too. Unless that's the point.
Then we get into, like, meta discussion that I don't want to get into right now.
I'm not complaining about Gabriel. I'm more complaining about just the fact that the character models lack any serious personality other than colors, and Gabriel is a big cockroach. Like, that's kind of it. That made me not appreciate it as much.
I think that's probably it. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah, just a lack of expression and a lack of personality from the visuals of the characters made me not like them as much as I did in Subsurface.
That is so funny because in Subsurface we're talking about like the personality of fucking robots.
Yeah, which is exactly. Like
that's hilarious.
I could buy the robots being like nannies or being exhausted sports players than a doctor being a doctor because they're all wearing containment suits. Like,
yep. In Quarantine, the characters do have a lot of personality if you look at the notes and you see like the art of them, but that doesn't carry over into the game. That's just there, and you kind of infer from that note that like, oh, this person is kind of like this based on their stance in their
like
art.
Mark's a dork, or like
Mark's a big fucking dork. I'm swearing a lot tonight.
Whatever. Or like Lisa's really skeptical, or Tang is really, by the books. Like, but that's all stuff that you could put together just from the way they're talking. You don't need the notes to give you that accent of their personality.
So here's a question: in a way, if you can tell a story, well, I think I have an answer to this question already, but I'm going to ask it anyways. If you can learn the entirety of a character's personality and kind of their beliefs by reading about them instead of looking at them, is that a good thing or a bad thing? With consideration that this is a video game.
I mean, I would definitely say a good thing, right? Like if you can convey a character through describing them and not needing to have them say anything, that is potentially a very good bit of writing. But when you give accompanying visuals and they're not supplying anything, it makes you wonder what the visuals are there for. Exactly.
Yeah.
And maybe it's to show faces. Like, again, maybe it's a meta thing, and it's like the narrative point is that you can't see the characters, and that removes their humanity. So you stop looking at them as humans with nuance, and you start looking at them as blank slates that are supposed to, fill in for ideas. Like Tang is the idea of individualism and not trying to take part in any
very much not
conquest.
needing. I think Tang is more the idea of self-sufficiency.
Yeah, individualism. Yeah, like not needing
help,
require help, and not helping others because what do you how does that help?
What do you know?
What are you, an alien? You're an alien. Look at you, just stupid plate armor. Fuck you.
Oh no, my mouth.
Giorgio Armani suit. So like, you have that character, and you've got the optimistic scientist. You've got this skeptical student who's not experienced, and she sort of gives you an example of like, skeptical science or even homeopathy as a solution to stuff. Like, there's just all these different approaches to how they answer the problems, and the blank slateness of them is supposed to help that. But again, I don't know. Like, that's just me speculating on what the meta narrative of the lack of good visuals for the characters is supposed to mean.
So I actually want to talk about the meta nature of this game, because like it's so present and all encompassing because of how it has you handle each of the characters that I feel like we can't not talk about it. There's this interesting concept that the game presents, and other games have done this too, where it's almost like a dramatic irony where like the player has their goal, but the characters in the game don't necessarily have that same goal, but the player controls the characters. So the player has to decide, do I play this character as that character would be from what I know of them, or do I try and use this character to steer the game or the plot in the direction that I want? That conflict was very much felt for me in quarantine. Like I said, at the end, like for you and me, we made two very different decisions. I had Tang get out of the way because I wanted to see what would happen if she didn't get punched. You made her stay in the way because it made more sense to you for her personality to do that. And I don't know, I just wanted to bring that up because it's such an interesting concept that games do explore, but very few of them do it or do it well. And I feel like that was one of the things Quarantine did best, was make you kind of struggle with yourself of what you wanted to happen.
No, for sure. There's definitely a very serious internal struggle between the player's desire to act out their own thoughts and the player's desire to properly roleplay. Like, when you come into the situation, like you said with Mark, like you had just played Subsurface, so you came into Quarantine thinking like, oh, this is very much going to be the same thing. I will be Mark the whole time. That means I get to self-insert.
Exactly. And I very much did.
Yeah, no, I did too. Like, at the start, I was like, all right, I am Mark. But like, as time went on, you start to realize like, oh, holy shit, I'm everybody. So do you impose your will onto those characters? And what does that say about, you know, you? That's crazy. What does that say about you as the game's Gabriel?
Exactly.
Yeah, like you're coming into the game trying to solve the problems, but like, should you? Like, is it even your place? Do they want your help? Like, you have no choice. That is super interesting.
It gets a lot cooler when you think about it that way. Like, you very much are an alien to this entire situation in the way that Gabriel is. So if anybody should be a self-insert, it would be Gabriel.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, in some regards. You have less control over Gabriel though, so
you get to control him once, twice.
Yeah. No, once I think.
It's once, but it's for the end of one segment in the first half of another, I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah, twice I guess.
Whatever. So that's pretty fucking rad.
Yeah, that's nuts. I never thought of it like that.
Yeah.
Super cool. Video games are wicked.
Video games are too good for this world, man. We should ban them all.
I agree.
Except Subsurface Circular and Quarantine Circular. We can keep
the only two good games ever made. Be sure to like and subscribe. Ocarina of Time's garbage.
Oh, shit! We're going to get banned from every podcast channel now.
Whoops.
I feel like we have sufficiently discussed both of these games.
I definitely... No, I've already asked all my questions about Quarantine for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like, I had some questions I was going to ask, but they, like, got answered as we discussed, so I think I'm good.
No,
All right, so that's it for this pilot episode of Monthly Bytes. Thanks for joining. Once we figure out what game we're gonna do next, I'll just slap that here at the end and let you guys know. And I'll also include like instructions for like where to reach out and blah blah blah. I'll add all that shit in post.
Right.
All right.
Then we're done?
I think we're done. I'm gonna hit stop. Hey, it's Nevin, recording this later because we've kind of improvised a bit of that ending. We're going to be doing an episode 2, 100% for sure. The next episode's going to be in October, and it's going to focus on Arbitrary Metrics Paratopic. You can find that on both Steam and itch.io, so pick it up and join in on the fun. We're actually going to start taking your questions about whatever the monthly game is, and we're going to use those as discussion points during each episode. So, as you play the game, just send us your questions. You can provide questions in two ways. You can email them to nevin@indie-bytes.com, or you can reply to a post and get a pin to the Indie Bytes Twitter profile. If you email questions, don't put any spoilers in the subject line. Be considerate, I might still be playing through it. Last up, a little bit of bookkeeping. This episode was edited by Myles With A, so hey, thanks for that, buddy. You can find Jesse's content on Twitter and YouTube at Chadunda. You can find more of my own content on Twitter at IndieBytesYT, on YouTube under IndieBytes, and at indie-bytes.com. The music used in this episode is from the Subsurface and Quarantine Circular soundtracks by Dan Le Sac. Both are fantastic soundtracks that you can find on Bandcamp. Thanks again for listening. We're looking forward to getting your questions. I will see you next month.